Yes,
What?
yes. I just
No!
offended the entire Reddit community for whom you advocate.
I can't be on this show anymore. It'll ruin my Reddit cred.
Oh,
My
wait.
Reddit.
Hello and welcome to Mana Biscuit, your weekly geek culture, pop culture, all kinds of culture out your ears podcast. I am RJ Velosky. With me, as always, are my co-hosts. First up, TJ Rathburn. How you doing, TJ?
Doing well.
All right, and Jacob Gamble. How you doing, man?
Always first.
Because I'm the best.
Uh-huh.
Okay, all right. Well, remind me to put you first next week, and then I'll forget. So,
You don't.
all right. But the important thing is,
They're leading with the sex appeal, Jay.
That's right. That's why I'm first.
Me and all.
Yeah. All right, but we're here, and that's the important thing. All three of us. First time in, gosh, like almost a month that it's been all three of us, because we had a week off last week. It was just TJ and I the week before. So yeah, 3 weeks since it's all three of us, but we are back.
Yeah.
And we're ready to talk about stuff and things. So let's start with Jay.
Oh goodness!
Ooh, yay.
Yeah.
Jay, what you been up to since the last time we got together, man?
Oh my god. Okay, so yeah, GenCon. It was amazingly awesome. I cannot say. I can't even begin to describe it. It was my first con experience. It's first big con experience. I mean, I've done the little Comic Cons and things like that, but nothing to this extent before.
No.
And
Gen
it
Con
was
scale is just staggering.
amazing. Like looking out at the vast sea of people as I was getting my foot eaten by the escalator and throwing my phone up in the air trying to take a picture. It was just phenomenal. I mean, these are my people and I loved it. Sat around, played some D&D, some Pathfinder, some Shadowrun, sat in a couple panels, met Terry Brooks, got to Will Wheaton and Laura Bailey. Got to talk to them about what they were doing. Yeah, listen to them, I should say, not actually talk to them. And it was exciting. I loved every minute of it. Looking forward to going back next year, and probably a couple more after that. So
yeah, absolutely. Gen Con, big on my list too, but you pretty much said it. It's just mind blowing. The scouts. First time I've been to Gen Con, the sheer awesomeness of that many people all there because they love to game, they love to geek, they love to nerd out. It's what we're all about. It is our mecca, if you will. Forgive me if any of our viewers find that sacrilegious. Sacrilegious.
Sacrilege. Wow.
All right, TJ,
Moving
what you
on.
been up to, man?
Well, I didn't get to go to Gen Con this year, so I've been pretty much a homebody. I did get a chance to read a book that is very much in the nerd culture oeuvre. I read Armada by Ernest Cline, the guy who wrote Ready Player One.
Oh, right.
Ooh.
And Ready Player One was great, and this book was bad. It was just god awful, just the worst book.
I saw somebody say it was okay, but it wasn't any Ready Player One. But you think it's a lot worse than that?
It's worse than that. I've seen a lot of reviews like that where it's like, oh, if you're expecting more Ready Player One, then it's not going to be quite what you're looking for, but it's still pretty good. And I'm like, no, man, you are dumb.
It's interesting. If we could take a brief aside there. What font does one use to express that tone of voice? Exactly.
Comic Sans.
Okay. I can't argue with that. Continue.
So, yeah, it was the most cliche-riddled thing I've ever read, and that does include Ready Player One. It was full of references, but much more focused references, and they were all super forced. Like, I don't know if you guys read Ready Player One, but there were points when it felt forced there. But it made a certain level of sense that the entire plot revolves around trying to find Easter eggs in essentially a video game by understanding the loves of this nerd who created the game. So all these pop culture things are all stuff that this guy put in there. None of the stuff makes any sense in Armada. Like, it doesn't need to be there. It doesn't belong there. It was just him sticking to his shtick. And that, I mean, for some authors, that sort of thing works. And for him, this time, it just did not. All of the characters were paper thin. The plot was just ridiculous. And I got, like, maybe 30 or 40% of the way in, just going, why isn't anything happening yet? I know what's going to happen. It is so transparently obvious what is going to happen. Just tell me that it happened so I can be finished with this god-awful book. So, for those of you who loved Ready Player One, don't read this. For those of you who like good literature, don't read this. And for those of you who liked this a lot, don't leave me a comment. I have literally no interest in hearing.
Fair enough.
Wow.
This might be a little controversial in this circle and maybe some of the circles that find or watch this show, but I couldn't get past the first 10 pages of Ready Player One. The entire concept to me was just stupid. Okay, let me unpack that a bit because that's a bit trivializing. What I mean to say when
It was just stupid.
is that it was really stupid. No. Reference culture in general is one part of geek culture that it's so overdone that it has to be done to a T to engage me. And when the entire premise of the book is, hey, reference culture's a thing, maybe I should write a novel about reference culture and it'll be meta because that's also a thing. And like I said,
you guys remember the Ecto-1?
Yeah.
Like in Ghostbusters?
Yeah.
It was a movie. Now, I'm not going to get too hateful on Ready Player One because I enjoyed it as a bubblegum, kind of piece of work. But no, Armada, no.
All right. Fair enough.
Hold on. Before we go any further with this, you played right into the whole kid getting eaten by the escalator thing on my Facebook when I almost got eaten by the escalator.
Right.
All right. We straight up made a pop culture reference, and you played right into
Well, I actually was the first one to say it because I saw your dumbass getting eaten by the escalator, and then all of our friends immediately picked up on that as well. And two things in response to that: one, as I said, reference culture.
You didn't write a damn novel about it.
Thank you. That was my second point, but you made it perfectly. Anyway, my first point is though that it's a pervasive part of our culture and it has to be done really well. And Mallrats doesn't get called. You
did it really well.
Well, you did get eaten by an escalator. I mean, there's references and then there's, oh my God, Kevin Smith saw this in 1998 or whatever he made that movie. So there's that. Hey RJ, what you been up to this week? Well, glad you asked. Whatever. This is gonna be maybe a little I don't know. I don't know how quite to put this, but for people who are D&D veterans, this is going to perhaps paint me as a bit more of a noob to D&D, even though I love the game. I got involved in my first Eberron campaign, and oh my lord, Eberron, where have you been all my life? Why have I not been playing you? It is hands down my favorite setting. Every time I read about it, the way that they blend like urban fantasy, what do they call it? Arcanopunk, with this sort of film noir infused D&D culture. That is so up my alley in terms of personal taste that I am amazed that I never knew what Eberron was before this, but played the first session in the campaign. Really stoked to finish it out there. I'm playing a Warforged wizard because in 5e arcane spell failure isn't a thing anymore, so Warforged wizards work mechanically and also conceptually. I'm having a lot of fun with the character there. So new D&D game that I'm really excited to be a part of, and that was the highlight of my week. So well, it sounds like we all had all had pretty good weeks there. Oh yeah, and I was at Gen Con too, but like I said, Jay covered all of that. I mean, it's just amazing experience.
Mind-blowing.
Yep.
Loved it.
If you're just getting into Eberron for the first time, I recently, like a couple of months ago, I read an AMA by the guy who created the system on Reddit. It was really fascinating. I'll link it to you later.
Actually, it seems I recall you mentioning that way back in the episode we talked about D&D. You said you read an AMA with. I don't know. Whatever.
It might have been either with that show, or it might have been when we were talking about your game that you were running.
Oh yeah, I think that's true too. Because unbeknownst to me, the custom setting that that I was trying to make for the game that TJ's in
is functionally Eberron.
Because like I said, it's so far up my alley. I'm amazed that I never knew exactly what it was, and so now I see. Oh, I was trying to make Eberron when really I should have just started with Eberron, and I might retcon the whole thing into Eberron. We'll see how that goes.
Hey, this segues into a real quick plug. We are going to be doing the three of us are going to be doing a Pathfinder Roll20 campaign upcoming.
We got to work the details out on that yet, but we'll definitely stay tuned. As soon as we have more details, we will get that up for you.
It will be live streamed on Twitch. I promise you that.
And presumably aired thereafter on our channel.
Yes. All right, and that will be in the Path. You mentioned that was Pathfinder?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, you did. Yeah. So in the Pathfinder setting, which pretty cool. I also
it's all right.
Yeah, it's Okay, we do got to move on, but there's one thing I want to say that Pathfinder for me is really great because of the complexities that you can get into with different types of classes. 5th edition is great because you can just get some people together, roll some dice, and move on with the play. But
yeah, the more that I dig into Pathfinder, because I was playing it before at one point, and the more I dig into it now, making a character for the upcoming campaign, the more I appreciate 5th edition.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's about all you can say about it. They both have their charms, but 5th edition for ease of play, it's probably the best thing that WotC has done since they took over TSR. I mean, I have no qualms making that assertion, even though I didn't know Eberron was a thing, so maybe I'm not that much of an expert. Anyway.
Is there a 5th edition Eberron?
No. Well, yes and no. They do. They have like a little what do they call them, unearthed arcanas, where they do like the homebrew or play test rules. So they are more than likely going to release Eberron, but they have a handful of rules, like because the campaign I'm playing is 5th edition, and so there are rules for like Warforged and Shifters.
I love Warforged.
Yes, Warforged. My Warforged. I've only played one session with him, but my Warforged wizard is probably one of my favorite characters ever from my games. There's so much.
If you do retcon that we're in Eberron, I totally have a character that I would like to play if my guy dies eventually.
All right. Well, we're not on the
clock. This is off topic. Continuing.
We got to move along. We got a little bit of a late start, and we got a lot of stuff to get in. So, moving on to what probably the top news story was this week: World of Warcraft.
Blizzard fanboy.
Yeah. Yes. Look, man. We have not talked about Blizzard, non-ironically, in weeks. So it's back to the Blizzard podcast. Look, so WoW Legion, the next expansion, announced at Gamescom. First time they've not announced a new expansion at BlizzCon.
Well, since they've had BlizzCon.
Yeah, since they've had BlizzCon, but
which they've had since they announced their first expansion.
Did they? Was
yes.
the first expansion?
First BlizzCon
Burning
was 2005.
Crusade was done at BlizzCon?
Yes.
I did not know that.
First BlizzCon was 2005, I believe. Burning Crusade was announced there as well. So yes, first expansion that was not announced at BlizzCon. I watched the live stream, and this pains me to say this because I do have a soft place in my heart for EverQuest, but I felt like I was watching the announcement for an EverQuest expansion. Nobody gave a flying bleep. There was every time they announced something, there was this half-hearted applause. It was not a focused event. I mean, Gamescom is a huge conference, and this is just one small corner of it. It's not the main draw like it would be at a BlizzCon. And to me, it's finally here. This is the people have been saying that WoW is dying, and I don't think WoW is dead by any stretch of the imagination. But
5 million people still isn't dead.
Right. People have been saying that WoW is dying since Lich King. Because since Lich King, subscriber numbers have consistently dropped, and they are now, after a huge spike last winter for Warlords. Thank you. It's dropped now to about half of what that was, to the lowest point since Classic. And I don't know. It's over. In terms of it being the big daddy on the block, it's over as being the big draw at Blizzard, really, too, isn't it? I mean, Hearthstone is got to be the big draw at Blizzard now, I think.
Overwatch will be I guarantee you that the Overwatch announcement will be the big thing.
Okay, yeah. So that'll be the big thing at BlizzCon, but I don't think that...
Yeah, but we already know, and frankly, who cares?
Well, some people care, to be fair.
I look forward to playing Overwatch. I look forward to...
Isn't it just their version of Team Fortress 2?
Yes.
Yeah.
Can't I just play Team Fortress 2?
No, you cannot.
No, to be fair, if Team Fortress 2 is the type of thing that you enjoy, which for me it's not, I really don't care for first-person shooters in general, but if Team Fortress 2 is the type of thing that you enjoy, you should be ecstatic that Blizzard is taking it on, because Blizzard doesn't do anything half-assed.
That's a lie, and you know it. Blizzard didn't used to do anything half-assed. Since 2008, when Activision bought them, Blizzard does everything half-assed.
Okay, yes, Mr. Reddit, Bobby Kotick Kate.
Wow.
But anyway, Blizzard, the expansions, a lot of the WoW content hasn't been done half-assed. But what have they released in terms of...
Diablo 3? That
was an amazing game.
Playable until 2 years after?
Oh, I don't know. I have 200 hours on a release wizard that says it was plenty playable for me.
I put in 100 hours as well, but you know what? That's because of the people that we are. They could have seriously just given us a game that was all sick, and we still probably would have played it for 100 hours.
Well, there were some things with the auction house that I think they weren't really thought through, and obviously they draw the
great. I mean, by not great,
back,
I mean it
but
was terrible.
Something we were talking about earlier in pre-show about Warcraft and the way that things were segregated in terms of skill and gear and that sort of thing early on is something that was very much the case in early Diablo 3. Playing through on Inferno difficulty with the initial loot system was no joke.
It was ridiculous.
And that's what kept me going. That and the fact that I was laid off at the time, so I had plenty of time to go. But
I never got gear that I could use. Everything that I got, I just sold and then bought something off the auction house, and that's not Diablo.
Right.
The point of the game is that you're supposed to just be able to grind and find new stuff and get that Skinner box hit that tells you to keep playing because you might find something cool. And it just didn't happen because they wanted to be able to soak money off the real money auction house. It was when they finally pulled that off and started to change the loot system and add in some of the progression past leveling your characters to 60 that became an actual full, what I would call a Blizzard experience, a solid, good game.
I played about maybe 5-10 hours since the 2.0 patch, and but
you also put in 200 hours before, which probably sated your interest in a Diablo game.
Yes and no. Part of it, I enjoyed that initial satisfaction of finally getting usable drops, and it wasn't long. Within that 5 hours, my companion had a higher DPS rating than I had when I was trying to grind through Inferno difficulty. But because I quickly got to that level, it's just okay. What you referenced earlier, the Skinner box, is not as effective when the rewards are consistent. And so I didn't keep getting pulled back the way I did before. That, and I had a job at 2.0. I didn't have a job when it released initially. But anyway, I don't know. That huge tangent. Look, there's a lot of Activision hate out there, and the Blizzard I don't buy all the conspiracy theories, but I see where they're coming from. Anyway, Blizzard is the point I was making initially about Overwatch is that Overwatch will be better than Team Fortress 2 because Blizzard is a better developer than Valve.
Ooh. Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Oh,
I know.
Oh.
Yes,
What?
yes. I just
No.
offended the entire Reddit community for whom
No.
you advocate.
I can't be on this show anymore. It'll ruin my Reddit cred.
Oh,
My
wait.
Reddit. All my sweet, sweet karma frittering away.
Downvoted to.
I don't know how you can say that Valve. Well, I mean, you didn't say Valve's a bad.
No, they're not a bad developer.
No,
I
not
just
a
think
bad
Blizzard.
developer.
Well, for starters, Valve is primarily known for first-person shooters and team-based shooters,
Which you don't like.
which I don't care for.
But I mean,
so
dude,
yes, the value judgment better. Obviously, that's kind of one of those things you put out there to get a reaction. But I will stand by the fact that Blizzard, they both develop good games in their field. And if I was going to play a team-based shooter, I would probably be more compelled to play a Blizzard team-based shooter than I would a Valve team-based shooter.
I mean, honestly speaking, and like, it's hard to say this because obviously World of Warcraft devoured all of our lives at one point or another, or continuing. But honestly speaking, you take like the best games that Blizzard has put out, and you put them up against the best games that Valve has put out, and I don't know how you could say that Blizzard was better. Maybe equal. But even that's a stretch.
Well,
Like,
I'd say that they are on par in terms of being really good at what they do historically. I mean, strategy games, real-time strategy games in particular, RPG-style settings, Blizzard is at the top of that. Really tight first-person shooters and team-based shooters, Valve is at the top of that. For me, the mechanics of a team-based shooter aren't necessarily as important because I am not a first-person shooter aficionado or a team shooter aficionado, but the type of accessibility, the type of flavor, and the overall art style that Blizzard tends to add to games would make me more compelled to play Overwatch than Team Fortress 2.
yeah, I mean, I'm not particularly a Team Fortress 2 player. I can't say a bad word about the guys who did Half-Life or Portal.
Yeah, I mean, well, Portal was appropriated, but they are the ones that brought it to the masses.
It was appropriated. It was some guys that were working on like demo stuff, but it was still internal stuff. Like, these were people who worked for the company, tasked, like they basically went, hey, we have no idea what we're gonna do with Half-Life. Just everybody go do something random and fun, whatever you like, and bring that back. And the guys brought the Portal mechanic, and they're like, well, that doesn't really fit Half-Life, but we could really do a cool game.
Sure. Yeah. And I've seen other examples of Valve. Don't take this the wrong way. I think Valve's a great developer. I am instinctually averse to the prevailing opinion on Reddit at any given time, and two, I can never truly forgive them for Steam. But anyway.
I knew that was gonna come out eventually.
Yeah.
Your dislike for Steam versus
It's true.
I've heard a lot of hate from you for Steam, and I'm still not entirely sure what the bedrock of it is.
The bedrock of it is that it's behind a DRM wall. I mean, that's really what it boils down to. We could talk about individual practices that we can try and pick apart, and we did on the show months ago. With the paid add-ons, but for me, it just boils down to trying to keep everything centralized behind a DRM wall that they control. I mean, you could talk about the big evil of Activision and EA all day, but it's I find it far more disconcerting and far more insidious, the evil of keeping all of your game content behind a DRM wall controlled by a single developer. I mean, that's just the crux of it.
No more insidious than scalping abandonware for $10 a pop that nobody wanted initially anyway. But anyway, moving on.
Well, yeah, Mister gonna try it. Yeah, scalping abandonware. That's not GOG's game, for starters. And if nobody wants it, then nobody buys it. And if they hadn't, quote, scalped it, nobody would be playing it in a legal sense anyway. But anyway.
We all have, to play this diplomatically, we all have our featured franchises, featured things that hold a special spot for us.
But I'm right.
and most fanboys that do the whole Valve thing as well are gonna say you're right as well. Just like most of them are gonna do, just like the other splice section is gonna say that RJ.
I'm also gonna say just like straight up that I'm not denigrating Blizzard at all. They're awesome. They're awesome. Okay. I'm just saying that I can't put them like head and shoulders above Valve.
Well, I don't know that I could either. I would see them as far as big marquee names for developers over the last 10-15 years. I would put them on par.
Maybe eventually Activision will buy Valve as well and merge them all into one company.
Yeah, I just don't see the huge Activision influence that people want to claim is there with Blizzard. It's just it's not there for me.
Well, I mean, there's stuff that I could talk about, but we're trying to keep this to like a 45-minute episode, and we're already almost there. So,
are we really? What time? Where are we looking at for time here? Yeah, we need to keep it rolling. So, nobody can read that.
I know it reads. This is how much I care about this conversation. Ultimately, like I'm excited for Legion. I really am. I will go back. I will come back for it. I will check it out and. Shadow Hunter, Demon Hunter, whatever you want to call it. Oh my goodness, yes.
I don't know. I'm just not terribly excited about Burning Crusade 3.
Yeah.
It's like they were like, the best thing we ever did was Burning Crusade, apparently. So let's split it into two different things and do the Orc part and the Demon part as two different expansions, both of whom are going to be essentially half expansions.
To be fair, though, I think the reason they're going in this direction is because there was so much backlash against the orcs because MOP, for being purportedly about pandas, was really about orcs.
Yeah, and this was very much about orcs.
Yeah,
and they need to get away from orcs for a minute. And I think
so they're moving back to and like they've
honestly, I suspect that Warlords was supposed to last longer than it is, but they couldn't figure out a way to like extend its life cycle because of some of the missteps that they've made, particularly with garrisons, and that the goal was to have this be set up so that it's familiar sounding characters for when the movie comes out. That's what I suspect this was supposed to be. Was to be the movie tie-in, and then they stumbled and like, we need to get something else out there now. They
were keeping their options open for a shorter expansion from the beginning. There was talk about only 2 raid tiers from day one in Warlords.
But they were talking. I mean, and I haven't watched the actual release video like you guys have, but everything that I read as far as the speculation and things like that goes says that this is going to center around Vol'jin and
it's very
his and bringing back the Zul orcs and the Azshara Naga. As the
and you know
primary...
what would be great? An alliance-based expansion, for the love of God.
Which we haven't seen since Wrath.
Yeah.
I mean,
and Wrath was a semi-alliance one because...
it was pretty much all alliance. I mean, the Horde story in Wrath was... Other than the setup for Garrosh, there wasn't much to it. Okay. Well, and of course... what's his name? The orc dude that became a boss because Sourfang, yeah. So anyway, all right, that's enough about Blizzard. We wanna move along. I think.
But like I wanted to say one more thing.
Okay.
Because he was talking about the different things. Jay, you haven't apparently seen the video. You don't know all of the different features that are coming out.
No.
But when you do see it, it feels very much like, and this is something that has been pointed out on the internet and feels kind of recycled now if you look into it. But it feels very much like it's a in case of trouble, break glass expansion.
Okay.
It's all the things we've been begging for 8 years. It's like
everything they wouldn't give us over and over and over
you
again.
always wanted to get your hands on. Yours. Like we can't do player housing right now. We just did garrisons. We're gonna do class housing-y thing. That's cool. We're gonna bring Illidan back. We're gonna finally show you what happened with Azshara. You like the Burning Legion? More Burning Legion. Like. It's very much just like a greatest hits
throwing
album.
Things out of the closet. You like the shirt? Yeah, here you go.
Like, you really like this? Let's give it to you now. And on the one hand, it seems kind of like you're being pandered to, but on the other hand, yeah.
I know, because leave it to the internet to find fault in a developer listening to the fans, right? Because all they do is bitch nonstop about how Blizzard doesn't give a shit about the fans anymore. And now that they're finally putting all these things out, they're just I'm done with you, internet. Anyway.
Okay, so what's the next topic?
Oh yeah, we wanted to talk a little bit about reboots this week.
Because...
Yeah. In general, this isn't really focused on anything news oriented or anything we've been doing. This is just kind of a general topic which we do sometimes. And reboots, speaking of hate on the internet.
Yeah, seriously, if you're talking about hate on the internet.
Yeah. They reboots get a lot of it, and it's a hate that I tend to share personally. It's the arguments are tried out all the time, right? It's lazy. People, people don't come up with original IPs anymore. People want to try and cash in on nostalgia, and that's pretty much the arguments. A summary of the main arguments I think that are made against reboots, and I think a lot of them hold a lot of water. I don't know. Do you guys hate reboots as much as I do?
I love reboots. Honestly, my opinion on this is simply this: it was a good story to begin with, and I give future artists the opportunity to be able to put their take on it. It's part of the reason that and I didn't used to be that way. Okay, and a great example of this is Lord of the Rings. All right, the transitions that I've made personally, as far as the way that I view film and artistic interpretation, when the Lord of the Rings came out versus now when the Hobbits came out, is night and day. They did. The Lord of the Rings series, and I still hold a severe hatred for those things. Not because they weren't good stories, but because they completely took they took a fictional character and made them they took a character from a story and made her a primary character, and it had no business there.
Okay.
And then.
But, I mean, you're talking about Lord of the Rings here, but was Lord of the Rings really a reboot? It's an adaptation.
It's an adaptation, yes. But it opened my eyes as I progressed through things, as I've watched some of these other reboots, remakes, what have you, adaptations. It's gone from a purist aspect to a put your spin on it. Let's see what you can do. Let's see what you think needed to be added to the story.
Fair enough. Fair enough, and I think we want to revisit that. Yeah, I think we'll want to revisit that when we get to some other points I wanted to talk about this. But TJ, you also said you don't hate reboots as much as I do.
I guess I'm coming out in the more neutral standpoint. Rather than Jay being like, yay, reboots, and you being like, boo, I'm kind of like, all right, they can be worthwhile. I've seen a handful of things that were rebooted properly or readapted properly that did a good job with what they do. Especially, they do a really fine job of this in Japanese culture with anime and such, where they'll do like different versions of the same story, where like Neon Genesis Evangelion had the show, and then they did the films that reanimated and condensed and made the story make more sense. The Akira redo, like there's things that happen to make these more cohesive stories, and reboots are nothing new. Like we've been telling, even if you get away from like that theory where there's like 7 different stories and it's just how you tell it,
right?
How many different versions of like Shakespeare stories have you seen? There, like the Taming of the Shrew, like there's thousands of functionally just reboots and remakes of these stories, and a lot of them are really great stories, and on occasion you don't even necessarily notice until somebody points out to you, you know, like it's not a beat for beat thing, but this is functionally a remake of this story, and you go, oh wow, they made this this story that I never really connected with or found relevant into something that is personal, something that I can make into a part of my life and internalize those ideals, those ideas and those themes, and start to explore the things that the initial creators were playing with in a way that actually makes sense to me. And I think that that's a good way to do remakes. But I
want to pause there a second, though. Yeah, I want to pause there a second, though, because what you mentioned in particular with Shakespeare, and well, for that matter, plays in general, that is kind of a medium thing, though, right? Because plays, by definition, were rebooted every time a different company took them on.
That's a good point.
Yeah. Whereas a novel or a in modern times, television series, film, it's one auteur's vision of the story, and that tends to become the definitive version of the story. There are stories that have been retold many times, and especially adapting from plays in particular. You know, there's like 50 million versions of Romeo, Juliet, and Hamlet, and the other Shakespeare plays.
And
Go ahead.
Sometimes they're very different seeming.
Go ahead, Jay.
I've got to ask this question now, because you brought up that's a really valid point, and it's not anything that I've ever really thought of, was that, you know, each individual theater company doing a different doing the same show is essentially a reboot. Now, us being theater majors, this is theater majors, theater
nerds, geeks,
theater
whatever.
nerds,
yes.
Geeks, whatever you want to call us. You know, ultimately that's how we all met. Mm-hmm. And yet you claim to hate the reboot.
I do, and the reason being is, okay, you guys have had your turn, and I kind of had a little bit at the start there, so let me go into this for a minute. It does boil down, because you brought it up, and I made mention of it. It's a medium thing, right? So rebooting a play, even though it's been rebooted every single time, a particular or an individual human being might only see, you know, if they're really active about it, might only see 5-10 different versions of the same play done on stage in their lifetime. And that is unique, again, to that particular medium. But with a film, there's more of a shared cultural experience to it, because a film, especially in modern eras, is circulated globally. And everybody watches the same film. Everybody has that same shared experience. So I think that's what really differentiates, in terms of the medium, film from theater. And the reason that I am averse to reboots in general is because you're not really doing that much to try to expand the shared experience that film offers. When you simply rehash or put your take on another story, yeah, okay, if you're really good at it, then maybe something good will come out of it. And there have been good reboots. I will concede that. There are reboots that I have enjoyed. One of my favorite television shows, Doctor Who, is pretty much
reboot show.
The reboot show. Yeah, they've been rebooting that show every few years since the 1960s. And I get that. And if you can kind of incorporate this idea of the reboot,
which they did well.
Yeah, then you can pull it off well. And there are other things that, recently, the Mad Max reboot was ridiculously well received. But it was well received because it could have been a fantastic movie had the original Mad Max never been a thing.
Yes.
And I don't think that there's a lot of encouragement to step out and make something really good on its own merits when you're starting from a position where you're just trying to capture the nostalgia or recapture the excitement about something that existed 20, 30 years ago. I think that for the most part, it just tends to be a marketing gimmick.
Right.
Fair enough.
Well, I don't know.
And Mad Max itself was actually, like you said, it was a good movie, and it would have been a good movie in and of itself. But they did use it as a marketing gimmick. That story could have been told in any setting, any time, any place, and would have been just fine on its own. But they decided this would be great for Mad Max. And the only actual reference to anything from Mad Max from the original series was 5 minutes at the end, when they there was, aside from that, there was no reference to any of the older characters, anything other than it happened to have been quote unquote Mad Max rebooted. So yeah, that was one of those things that they could have done. TJ, wanted to go ahead, man.
Well, I was gonna step back to the theater versus film thing, and again, also back to Shakespeare, because it's just so simple to do with this.
Sure.
There are certain adaptations of Shakespeare, like for example, we've all seen Romeo and Juliet. Some of us have seen like the 1930 something black and white version. A lot of us saw the Baz Luhrmann version. And then a lot of us have also seen like West Side Story, which is Romeo and Juliet, only entirely different. Like the base of the story, the bones of it, of like the two people who are forbidden because of their social circles to be together, falling in love, is there, but it's an entirely different story. But that's a reboot, and it's still valid and worthwhile. It's still a piece that's worth merit on its own. The same thing with, like, you see The Taming of the Shrew, and then you watch 10 Things I Hate About You.
Yep.
They're both the same story in a sense. One is a reboot or adaptation of the other, and they're both worthwhile. And I think that the same thing can happen with any media. I think the main problem is that thus far, film and television, despite the fact that they're, relatively long-standing media, the way we kind of view things today, they haven't had the time that, like, theater has had. And in, a couple hundred years, how many versions of, like, your Mad Maxes or your, like, Terminators or whatever are you going to have seen? And things that become obvious adaptations of that, but not direct continuations of the story. And at what point does it stop being a reboot and start being like homages? Like it becomes a matter of coloration and degrees that gets really difficult to pin down.
Those are great questions, and I think that our viewers should answer them in the comments.
Yay!
Speaking of comments, we got to wrap up here, but when TJ and I were sitting on the couch, we promised those of us who left a comment that they would have their comment read before literally tens of people. And so we did get a couple. We did get a couple of. We did get a couple of comments,
and so we should respond to them.
Yes, and we're going to respond. First one is from Raven575. Raven, of course, friend of ours. We're trying to get him on the show. He'll be on the show eventually.
Yes.
But if you watched last week's episode, you will get this comment, and I will leave TJ to address it for those who have not seen it. But his comment was, TJ dancing on the internet. Can't delete it. It is here forever. Your response, sir.
Well, I mean, I'm kind of aware of that, which is probably why I was like, "Oh God, my dancing is on the internet." But I'm also going to point out that this is not the first time that I've danced on the internet like a fool, and it's certainly not the first.
The dancing boy.
And it's back again.
Yeah.
So, I don't think that's really a problem. I'm not really afraid of it, and I've never been afraid of making a fool of myself in public forums. So, you know, it'll be okay. It'll all be okay.
Fair enough. The other one was a little bit more substantive. Not that Raven's comment was unimportant, because we do got to get TJ and his dancing situation. We all need to come to terms with it, understand it in our own way. But
internalize it.
Yes. Yes. The other comment was from Dave Brown, parentheses, the 11th Doctor. Dave, a friend of ours as well. But this was in response.
Friend of the show.
Friend of the show, because, you know, only friends of the show watch the show at this point. If you watch the show, you're a friend, and vice versa. If you're a friend, you probably watch the show. Right. Anyway. His was in response to the topic we brought up in terms of the experiences offered between AAA games and indie games. And he said, "I find indie games to be far more compelling as someone who works a regular 8 to 5. The Binding of Isaac is a great example of a game that every single time you play is going to be a very different outcome. Supergiant has done a phenomenal job at capturing my attention with Bastion and Transistor, which are only half AAA in his opinion." So...
all three of those are fantastic games.
Yes, all three of those games are amazingly good.
Yep, and I'm, what can I say, I'm in agreement. Binding of Isaac in particular, his point that it's a different experience every time.
That I don't know if that's a function of it being an indie game, or whether it's because he particularly enjoys procedurally generated content and doesn't really experience it that much in other titles.
Although No Man's Sky is not dynamically procedurally generated, but they procedurally.
Oh, we got to talk about that game next week.
Yeah,
there are some things in that are just amazingly awesome, and I cannot wait for that.
And the game we talked about earlier, Diablo 3, and indeed the entire Diablo series as a whole, is a AAA. That does procedural generation. But the thing with Binding of Isaac and those types of games, which do tend to be more confined to the indie experience. Another great example is Rogue Legacy. Are games where you don't really consider them as one homogeneous experience as you play throughout, like you would most AAA titles, but you consider them segmented into runs. You know, this is a Binding of Isaac run. And you get as far as you can get, and not just the levels being procedurally generated, but the loot and abilities you can get. I've never had it happen on my run, but there's a certain combination of abilities where you can both explode and be healed by explosions. So you just become like Super Saiyan and just roll through, like blowing up on everything. I've watched a couple of those runs. They're a lot of fun to watch. I've never gotten it in my own game, unfortunately. But when I do, yeah. And then Bastion and Transistor are not procedurally generated at all.
No.
But they are...
Well, the levels are not the sound design in a certain sense.
In Bastion, and Transistor to a lesser extent, but definitely in
Bastion very much.
Yes, are more of a, and that's not, that is part of why they're interesting.
That is what made Bastion a great game to me, honestly. The narrator and the way that they had it set up so that it wasn't the same story he was telling every time. Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously it was very similar. The bones were there, but then... you would smack one of the like sluggy guys, and he would talk about how you just took your hammer to that guy like it was nobody's business. I'm like, I did just take my hammer to the guy.
Right. And Transistor for me was a lot of the elements you do see in AAA games, but thematically you don't see it a whole lot in AAA games. It was sort of this futuristic noir story that kind of plays around with a lot of the high-level sci-fi concepts of, the nature of existence, consciousness, etc., which, what can I say? I eat that shit up. But, so all three excellent examples of not just great indie games, but indie games that offer something that I think you wouldn't necessarily see to that extent in a AAA title. So, There you go. I think with that, we're
Thank you guys for the comments.
Yes, thank you.
Leave more because I would love to actually.
I would love to actually
I'm
have to
here
pick and choose, but for the foreseeable future, as we said last time,
friends, leave comments.
If you leave a comment, there's a pretty good chance that you will have your comment read before
RJ's mom. Leave a comment because I know you're a subscriber, and I would love to talk
She's
about.
She's left a comment on a video.
Oh, there we go. Yeah. Why don't we backtrack to that and talk about it?
Because it's like ages ago. Well, let me see if I can find it.
No.
I'll find it.
I don't have the time.
You don't have the time.
We have to wrap this up.
Yes. Okay. So my mom said, I like listening to the Jays. Not sure I'll always agree with them, but fun to listen. Smiley face.
She is a wise lady.
All right.
Yes, she is.
Okay.
Okay. Now, just before we wrap up, for those of you who enjoyed our conversation on reboots, which we did not nearly cover as much ground as we probably could or should have, please tune in on Thursday for our next episode of In No Particular Order, which is our top 5 show in which we count down 5 things on a particular topic in no particular order. This week being reboots that should never be a thing.
That's right. Excellent. Thanks for the plug there, sir. And that will be up. That will be up later this week. There is one more comment I do want to reach into our dregs for. It is the very first comment ever left on a video on this channel.
What a train wreck!
No. We're going much further back. It is first subscriber, first comment, second like. I am supportive. And that is by none other than TJ Rathburn.
Oh, wow!
So if only you.
Tell you what. Yeah, just leave comments and likes and stuff, and maybe someday you'll be on the show too.
There you go.
Like next week. You know,
yeah.
We'll take anybody at this point. Honestly,
I mean, we have Jay on here.
Yeah, wait, what? Oh.
All right. Well,
it's time for me to say goodbye.
Yep. Well, we're gonna wrap it up for realsies. All right. Thanks so much for watching. You know what to do. Like subscribe. All that. Follow us on the things.
Twitter. Yep. I love Twitter.
Oh, God.
All right.
You never heard me say that before, but I love Twitter.
For TJ Rathburn. Oh, wait. Crap. Sorry. For Jacob Gamble, because he's got to go first.
He's got to go first. For Jacob Gamble.
For TJ Rathburn.
Woo!
I'm RJ Velasquez. We will see you next week.